Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, the five most important potential returners to this Michigan team in 2025. Hey, everybody wants to talk about the transfer portal. We just talked about a commitment last night for Michigan. There's a really important conversation. That's called player retention. To give you a little insight about how this episode came about, you'd have to start with a little insight of the Rock Boys social life on Saturday night. We were just in a dark room debating on the most important returners for Michigan going into 2025. Said might as well open it up to all the Michigan fans. So we're going to go 1 through 5, our most important potential returners to this Michigan team in 2025, with the caveat being Will Johnson's gone, Mason Graham, Kenny Grant, Colson Loveland, the bona fide, top 50 picks go represent Michigan
Top
in the
50.
NFL. But some of them are top 10,
10.
top. I was being conservative, but the bona fide first round guys, hey, go represent Michigan on Sundays. Fired up to get into it. To the Michigan fans, the amount of support y'all have shown the boys has been amazing. We appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, let it fly with the top 5 in the comment section. Dill, I'll let you start. Your number one most important potential returner to this Michigan program. Who you got?
I have TJ Guy. I think we saw from TJ Guy in his probably fewer reps than I would have had him on was something I don't think Michigan's really seen from a defensive end player in a really long time. And just in terms of his ability to purely get after the pass rusher, I thought he was tough in the run game too, made his share of plays there. But that burst and bend he has on the edge, we really haven't seen it. We've played with more physical, heavy-handed defensive ends. Not saying that's a bad thing, but man, it's fun to watch a defensive end and a pass rusher who gets after it the way he does.
TJ Guy as a pass rush specialist is incredible. Probably one of the most, if not the most underrated Michigan player on defense this year. We heard all the buzz around him in fall camp. It certainly showed itself in the 2024 season. What I think is fascinating about TJ Guy is I think there's some meat left on the bone, and I think that's why we're excited about him potentially coming back for that 5th year. You said it. He was kind of primarily used as a pass rush specialist in some of those second, third, and long situations. It wasn't bad against the run, but could become a better run defender. And if he does that, you're looking at a top 150 pick in the NFL draft, because him getting after the pass rush, 21% win rate was the highest on the team from the defensive line. And you're in some special company on that defensive line. 14 quarterback carries. He's number 4 for me, just because I'm going to go number 1. I think this one's obvious. I'm surprised we didn't agree on this. Rod Moore. Dill, Rod Moore coming back, I think it is so big. And he's still kind of deciding why he's so big. One, he's a phenomenal football player, like an all-conference caliber dude. But more importantly, there's going to be a lot of moving parts with this Michigan secondary next year, right? Will Johnson moving on, Makari Page, Quinn Johnson, a lot of guys that have played a lot of football moving on to the NFL. We're potential. Jair Hill, we think we got a dude. Zeke Berry, wherever he plays, whether it's boundary, whether it's at nickel, we know we have a good player. But then you talking about potentially starting guys like Shamari Earls, true freshman guys, Josiah Edmond. It's going to be young. Like, who can be the glue guy? Who can be the guy that kind of ties this secondary together, the leader of this Michigan defense? I think it's Rod Moore, not only because he's a really good player, but he kind of brings this secondary together. He's number 2, so I'll give you a chance to kind of shine some light on your thoughts on Rod Moore.
Yeah, and just to expand, obviously you know what he is as a player, but in terms like the leadership role, I think he could take on as that guy if he comes back. He would feel like the real alpha dog. Like, that's who you're looking to be the guy.
He was like the real alpha dog being out for the season with injury.
That's what I'm kind of thinking, like what he was taking on just being injured. Like, man, I'd be really excited to see what he can be in terms of like, that guy to look to if he comes back.
Yeah, and he does everything so well, and he's so smart. He's like, you don't get all those pass breakups and interceptions by just getting lucky. Like, just right spot, right time. Tackles really well, which was something Michigan kind of struggled with in the secondary at times in 2024. Rod Moore and Mikey Sandstrom back to the 2023 season were some of our best tacklers, kind of getting that tackling and space going in the right direction again. That would be big. Dill, so my number 2, Derrick Moore. and it's not even a shot at TJ Guy. It's they're both really good. Like we want those two as our starting edge rushers in 2025. Derrick Moore's not always flashy, but he is so disruptive. Was second on the team with 22 quarterback hurries. Again, maybe didn't fill up this, although he did fill up the statistical category. But I think his impact on the Michigan defense is a little bit more than what you see in the box score. I mean, those are some heavy hands that Derrick Moore has. In terms of just walking tackles into the lap of quarterbacks, he can do that. Very strong against the run, setting the edge. Derrick Moore to me is probably just a little bit more of a complete edge rusher, or edge defender, I should say, than TJ Guy. But what excites me about TJ Guy is that upside as a pass rusher in 2025 is special. But I got Derrick Moore coming in at number 2 here.
I had him at 4, and it's really only because I had Rayshawn Benny at 3, mainly because
yes,
I look like there's a level of thinness in that defensive line, especially on the interior. When you lose the type of guys who played the amount of snaps that Kenny Grant and Mason Graham played, like you have a lot of like snaps to fill. Yeah. I thought Rayshawn Benny, again, a really underrated player for Michigan. I think when he got his shot to be the like he was out there doing a lot of really good things. I thought he had a really good game against Ohio State. So you look like he's a guy who'd be really important to get back because, yeah, I like what Trey Pierce is doing. I think Eno Etta has a chance to be a very good player. And Ike Awuna is a solid depth guy. And I probably got the ceiling that some of those other guys have. But Rayshawn Benny comes back. He's immediately the best defensive tackle by a decent
margin. And I think Keyshawn Silver from Kentucky, he's on campus, I believe, for Michigan today. And like this is a position that I think Michigan will try to address, not only because you have to replace Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, who played – we don't give enough credit for like how good they were, for how they both played over 550 snaps in 2024. They were on the field pretty much all the time, which is a ton for guys on the inside of the defensive line. You have to replace more of that just the depth. And Rayshawn Benny's a guy that was at 283, but the next guys were Ike and Trey Pierce at around 110. And so that kind of tells you that the gap in terms of playing time. Rayshawn Benny steps in as like one of those proven commodities on the inside of the defensive line, probably the leader of that room. You probably have to add 2 guys. I would think 2 bodies.
You can't. There's nobody in the portal who's particularly close, I don't think, to Rayshawn Benny's level. Like I look, there's just not that many great defensive linemen in a given year to add through the portal. Like Rayshawn Benny would be immediately, to me, by far the best player in the portal. So I think he'd be a very important retention play.
Yeah, and just for the depth on the inside of the defensive line, Dill, I had TJ Guy number 4. I think the next crop of guys, you talk about Derrick Moore, TJ Guy, Benny because of the depth on the defensive line. Also, they're really good football players. You talk about Rod Moore because of the glue he's going to be in the secondary. I think number 5, and it's kind of just a 2-4, right? You got Jayshon Barham, Ernest Hausman. I guess I'll ask you the question. Don't make me pick, but I'm going to make you. You get to choose between Jayshon Barham and Ernest Hausman. One of them comes back, one of them doesn't. Who are you taking here?
I think solely on the back of that Ohio State game, I'd go Hausman. I thought that was such a dominant football game from him. I mean, what we almost like envisioned when he came over, that sideline to sideline play, making tackles, just being super productive. That type of game, that made me think, oh, this could be one of the better linebackers we've seen in a while. And obviously, Junior Colston was that guy. He was a monster. If Ernest Hausman plays the way he played in that final Ohio State game, that's probably the best linebacker play I've seen at Michigan in quite some time.
I'll do it back to the Devin Bush days. I'm gonna fight you here and go Jayshon Barham, purely because the flashes of Jayshon Barham are so high. This is a guy that I think could be a top 100 pick in the NFL draft if he puts it all together. And it was, I wouldn't even say fits and starts, but he's pretty damn good for Michigan. Only missed 6% of his tackles, which is an exceptional number. If he comes back for year 2 with Michigan, year 2 in the Wink Martindale defense, understanding a little bit like, hey, that's a complex defense. Understanding it a little bit more. Having Jayshon Barham play with that like next level confidence, I think the ceiling for Jayshon Barham is probably a little higher than Ernest Hausman. Now, Ernest Hausman against Ohio State, they made it a very difficult decision, and Ernest Hausman is the one who wears the green dot. Like, he's the one that is, kind of bringing this defense together. But I think, and also the fit, I think Wink Martindale wants to get so creative with these linebackers. He wants to send them on blitzes. Jayshon Barham blitzing, whether it's the A or B gap or off the edge, is so dynamic as a pass rusher. And we know that's a big part of Wink Martindale's defense. So for that reason, I go Jayshon Barham, but Dale, there's a good chance we get them both back. The reason, for me at least, that they came in at 5 and 6 was because I like what we have in the young linebackers.
Yeah.
Like Jimmy Rolder, I thought had a very, very good year after a quiet 2023 year. Cole Sullivan, I think, is going to be an absolute guy, and I want to see him get on the field more. I'm a little less concerned about replacing them because I think we got some dudes coming up in the linebacker room. Nathaniel Usu-Boateng, I think, is a guy that can play early for Michigan as well. But again, those guys were very important as well. I think it's crazy because I think all of the top 5 for me.
Top 6, I would say, if you would separate out Barham and Hausman.
Yeah.
Like, there's 6 guys that I think would all be massive.
Yeah,
and we're splitting hairs a little bit.
Look, I think every single one of them gets drafted in the NFL if they want to go. I think TJ Guy too, in terms of what he put on tape as a pure pass rusher. But I think all of those guys are guys that could come back that would improve their draft stock. So that's what we're going with. Michigan fans, let it fly in the comment section. I think it's a fascinating conversation. I would expect a lot of Michigan fans to have Rod Moore at 1. I think that's crazy that you didn't. So we'll see what they think in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If you do you have you want to defend yourself?
I'm trying to think. Like, I do look at the young secondary pieces. Like, I look at that class coming in. I think there's some freshmen who can play.
Yes.
I really like Brandon Hillman. Like, there are some younger guys, and you don't need it to be quite as deep as what you need your defensive line rotation to be. I just look. I mean, like those guys in replacing what Mason Graham and Kenny Grant did over the last 2 years is going to be so hard because they were so dominant in a way that I don't think we'll ever see anything close to it. But I think Michigan, I'd still like to see a defensive line that I can look at and be like, that's an awesome unit.
Yes, agreed.
That's why I kind of look at those defensive linemen as being really important.
I know, but I'm just, like
Rod Moore. I mean, he's an all-time.
All these young defensive backs that would get the opportunity. Like it's almost not even just the 2025 season. It's like giving these young defensive backs the opportunity to learn and just like, because Rod Moore, what makes him special, he could be a coach like now. He understands the game at such a high level. Rod Moore, I think, would be so wonderful for these young defensive backs to learn with. That's why I went with him number 1. Again, let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different ways. I don't even, we should have rephrased it. I don't like picking between these guys. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.